Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. My guest today is critically acclaimed musical conductor Kazem Abdullah. In 2009, Kazem made his debut at the Metropolitan Opera as only the third Black conductor there, and that's 140-something years. But in 2021 and 22, he conducted the opera sensation Fire Shut Up in My Bones, the Charles Blow story. And now he returns with X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, composed by Anthony Davis, written by Tulani Davis, and directed by Robert O'Hara. And I am delighted to welcome Kazem Abdullah to our program today.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
With your name and the names I just read off, that is some star-studded list of Black talent involved in an opera at the Metropolitan Opera House.
That is very true. It's an amazing team of people and creators. I know, and I can probably speak for Robert. I feel very proud and honored to be able to be a part of this revival of the work that was created by the three creators: Christopher Davis, Tulani Davis, and Anthony Davis. So
all a family, I think.
All a family, yes.
Anthony and Christopher brothers.
Yes, and then Tulani is their cousin.
Tulani is the cousin. And of course, I remember 1986 when this opera was first introduced. It was the sensation of the day, first of all, because, you know, at that time, and even still today, I think that people don't think of Black stories as opera stories.
That's true. Yeah, I think it's. I think that there has not been a long history of classical music of Black stories being told in opera, and I think that's what's kind of great about the time we live in, is that there are so many stories that are truly operatic in Black history and in Black American history. And so I think now that we're already a quarter of the way into the 21st century, it's the time to move opera in a new direction, and I think it's great that the Met is making this effort to make sure that they're telling operatic stories of all people. Because I think for the art form to continue to be active and invigorating, that it's important that that the stories include stories of the not so recent history, and of course that's Black history.
Right, and of course Fire Shut Up in My Bones, written by the story of Charles Blow, a Black journalist that we all know so well. It's his life story.
Correct.
Of a troubled young period of his life and all. And I think it was the breakthrough. So that was the first Black composed opera at the Met. Terence Blanchard.
Terence Blanchard, yes, correct. Terence Blanchard, he composed Fire Shut Up in My Bones. It was actually his second opera. His first opera was called Champion. And yes, it was the first time that the Met had performed a work by a Black composer. And they were quite bold in the fact that the Metropolitan Opera chose to open their season after the pandemic with this piece. And it was a runaway hit. And I have to say, going back to X, I think X, of course, was done in the mid-'80s at New York City Opera. It was commissioned by Beverly Sills. And
that's a good name from the
exactly, Bubbles.
Right.
Beverly Sills.
Oh,
but it's funny,
her.
Beverly Sills was known by everyone in America, she was friends with Johnny Carson, Carol Burnett, but she was also this amazing general manager.
And she commissioned X.
She commissioned X. She is the person that raised the money, because some people didn't want to give money to it, but she found other ways to raise it, and she brought it, and it was a huge success in the 80s. And it was revived and it's successful again. So I have the story is amazing. The music is it's so much kinds of jazz music that's intertwined with classical form, so it really just makes for an amazing evening. And setting Malcolm X's life to music is a very unique and different way to capture his aura and his personality, actually.
Right. And now we understand that in the interim of 36, 37 years, it has changed some. Anthony has, it's shorter now. It used to be 3 acts, and now it's 2. And well, you know better than I. But,
yeah.
But whatever the edits that have been made in the story or the changes.
Yeah, so it will actually, as far as the edits, it is a little bit shorter. So there are just certain things that have just been like a little bit reduced, but it's going to be about a 2.5 hour evening. And it is still in 3 acts, so there will be a short pause in between acts 1 and 2 and then 2 and 3. So, but it is a little bit shorter than it was before.
I would love to be in the room. What kinds of discussions are you all having about this? How does that work now, the new, bringing it to life?
No, well, bringing it to life, I mean, on my end, you know, as far as how I do it as a conductor, basically my job is to make sure that the director's vision about how Robert O'Hara wants the arc of Malcolm X's life in this particular libretto to flow, and how that's combined with the musical elements that Anthony Davis composed. So my job as the conductor is really to kind of basically corral all 90 people that will be involved, or actually a little bit more. It's over 100 people if you include the Met Orchestra and the people on stage. It's well over 100 people, and my job is to sort of give them inspiration at certain moments, sometimes play traffic cop. Oh, like you might come in early. No, 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 no. You know what I mean?
Right,
or,
right.
Yeah, these sorts of things. So, and then my job is also to sort of give musical inspiration and guidance as we're going through the rehearsal process and making sure that people are where they need to be. Musically, vocally, all of these things, and just making sure that it continues in the right path. So it's a big responsibility, but I love working with people. I love music, and so I found the right job for myself, so I feel very glad.
We'll definitely be there. I can't wait to see it. But in reading about the trajectory of getting to the Met Opera, this actually started in Detroit and Omaha recently, places where Malcolm X had some following and history.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, Malcolm X, of course, he was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and then was a child in Lansing, Michigan when he lost his father. So Lansing is, of course, not too far from Detroit, and he had strong ties to Detroit. So no, the opera this revival started already about a year and a half ago in the spring of 2022, and I was the one that led sort of this revival musically. Me and Robert both were the same sort of.
So Robert O'Hara, for those who may not know, I mean, his gifted playwright, director,
Yes,
et cetera, had a huge success on Broadway, teaching at Yale, et cetera. And so he is directing.
He is directing, yes. Yeah, and he's a wonderful director, just very, he's kind of adding certain elements so that there are Afrofuturistic elements.
Afrofuturistic?
And I don't want to divulge too much because you have to come and see it, but it's like, he really ties the past because, in Malcolm X, of course, Malcolm X is discussed, but how Malcolm X came to be, how his parents were Garveyites and what Marcus Garvey represented. So it kind of goes back into history, and then there's a way of people, like black people in the future, discovering who Malcolm X was.
Right.
So so that which is a kind of an interesting thing. I remember seeing Whoopi Goldberg talking about she was excited to be on Star Trek because she could see black people in the future. Right. And so there's a futuristic element. I'm not in the position
Exciting.
to.
You don't want to divulge.
I cannot divulge anything, but it's a wonderful concept that he's created, and it's a very contemporary way of telling Malcolm X's story that's very true to Malcolm X, but also gives it this futuristic flavor.
So you in a TED Talk talked about how opera is defined. When someone says it's very operatic, that means that generally it's very involved. People are going to cry, women are going to be abused, or whatever. So talk to us about your concept of, I'm talking about the old operas, of course, but of opera and what it does.
Well, I think what opera manages to do, and this is the thing about music, if you think about seeing a play that's just spoken word, and then you think about hearing music, both of those things affect us differently. We concentrate on it differently. Music is sort of this intangible thing. We just know that we like these sounds and they make sense and they give us goosebumps. But then when you bring words and music together, it's a way of elevating speech. So if you think about yeah, think about your favorite R&B or pop artist or gospel artist. If you just read the text, of course it has meaning, but when someone sings the text, it imbues those words with extra meaning, extra profundity. And I think that that is what opera is, except it's telling a story with the added music. So like a story that would normally be, oh, that's a nice play, we enjoyed that. In opera, all of the emotions are elevated. The way the music imbues not only the words, but the music that happens around the words, in between the words, always informs the emotional trajectory of the story, and that's kind of what makes opera kind of, I think, so unique. And so when you add that, I mean, imagine like Malcolm X's words are already, when you hear the
Sure.
speeches and stuff like this, and the way of like telling a joke, the way of drawing a crowd in, he was already invigorating. But if you add if you take some of his text and add a symphony orchestra around it and a musical tune, it becomes something else, and you can be more. Malcolm X could therefore be a little bit more ironic. And I know Malcolm X also loved jazz and music himself, and I always think, oh, I wonder if he were alive, either in the '80s or today. I bet he would have gotten a kick out of hearing himself being played on the operatic stage.
Absolutely, absolutely. So talk to us about your career, because you're not totally alone in this space. There are other Black conductors
There are
now, thankfully.
There are many other Black conductors, yes.
But still, a lot of your experience is in Europe, where you are extremely successful. Would you say more so there than here? Is it easier? That always seems to be the story about.
No, that's true. That always seems to be the story, and I think that there's a certain aspect that that I think Europeans, and I worked in Germany, I think that like when I think about the first chances I got to really work with big symphony orchestras and do really big repertoire, that happened in Germany. And so I think that there is less, I can speak for myself, there was less of a reluctance to give a young Black person a chance. And not only that, to allow that person to learn, because only as a conductor, whether you're conducting or having to lead an institution, the only way you learn is by doing. It's basically like, it's one of these jobs you can't, quote unquote, go to school for it, but you actually have to do it. And I just found that with myself that Germany, especially when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, they were just more welcoming and more interested to engage me, and they saw the talent there. And just the places I got to go to, I was lucky that people, they of course saw my race, but they saw the talent, and they thought, oh, this is talent that we want to work with and that should be supported. And
so that's really,
yeah.
That's a statement. I mean, but of course, once you're recognized there, then here,
yeah,
you're able to move up the ladder.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and I feel very lucky that, that I've kind of have had this long sort of association with the Met now, like in many ways, and I'm looking forward to like being very much involved into the American classical music landscape, because this was the country where I was born, raised, and trained and educated, and I feel that like as much as I love working in Europe, love being there, I love the culture, like there's many things to like about living in Europe. I do feel like my home is in the United States. Spiritually, this is where at least half of my ancestors are, from the, are descended from slaves and Black Americans. So, I feel I feel a really strong affinity to want to be able to perform here and teach here and really be involved in the American musical landscape, like in America, because I feel I have so much to give back.
Right. Well, you mentioned teaching. I saw in your bio that among the places that you've taught is Interlochen in Michigan, where my granddaughter, has spent a couple of summers in the art department there. That's quite a place. But, so that you say that wherever you go, you try to engage with young musicians or people who are interested in the music to get them fully engaged.
Yes, that's true. Whether it's, yeah, you know, like, so for instance, if I go to the city and they have a youth orchestra, if there's the chance to work with the students in the youth orchestra, I take it up because it allows me to get to hear and see how young people are doing, like, you know, how they're approaching classical music. I can teach them something. I can learn something from them. Like, you know, I always try to, like, if there's time in the schedule, to always try to go to schools, meeting with band directors, just because I think so much of what we do in music is about relationship building in the end. And I am, like, you know, I'm just keen to make sure to build those relationships and also to show young people that there are people like me leading symphony orchestras and things like this, and that this is an interesting line of work, and yeah, you know, that it's a labor of love that they also can pursue if that's something that they want to do.
I'm sure they would be keen to know how you got engaged. Now, you were started as a clarinetist.
Correct.
Right, and I think we have video of that. I'd love to see you playing. When did you start playing this?
Started playing at the age of 9.
9, the clarinet. All right, and here is Kazem playing the clarinet, a little bit older than 9. That was just beautiful, Kazem.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Kazem says it was beautiful. What a sound.
No, but I haven't seen that in a long time.
Right.
So, like, probably, like, yeah.
What a
long time since I've seen that, but yeah.
So from playing the clarinet,
Yeah.
and obviously being a standout star that way, how do you then make that transition into conducting?
You know, so I was always interested in conducting from the time I first started playing in orchestra, and I started playing in orchestra from around the age of 11 and 12. So I've, like, you know, that's something that I like. Playing in orchestra, playing in ensembles is something I've been doing since I basically started playing. And you know, when you're playing in a youth orchestra and you see the conductor and you see them like leading and stuff like this, I thought, oh, that's something that I think I would like to try to do. You know what I mean? And then I remember when I was actually at Interlochen, there was a music library, and her name was Alice. And I remember I went into the music library, and the student orchestra I was like 12, and we were playing a movement of Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. And I wanted to like just hear an orchestra play it. So like, you know, I went in to go listen to the CD. I remember the librarian told me like, oh, Kazem, you should take the score with you. Like, you know, the score is it's the music that has all the instruments in it. And like, you know, it's basically the whole piece is like a book. And so then, so she gave me the score. I listened to it with the recording.
You're 12 now.
Yeah, I'm like 12 years old.
Right.
And I just remembered that was the first time I had a full score and was listening to a CD of Tchaikovsky Fifth. And I remember I was trying to find, well, where's the clarinet? Like, where's my part? Because, you know, like all 20 to 25 parts are on there. And I was looking like, where's my part? And then I found it. But then I was like, oh, well, actually, what the violin is playing is more interesting. Or, you know, and it was just sort of like, it opened this world. And then I just started like getting scores to any piece I was playing. And I would like get the score, I'd get a recording, I would study it in rehearsal. I would have the score on my stand while we're rehearsing, you know, in the youth orchestra. So I just kind of went on, and then like, you know, and it was just something I was always interested in. Conducting is the kind of thing, but I was told by a teacher, my clarinet teacher was like, that's great that you want to do conducting, but become the best musician that you can.
Right.
That
Right.
should be your priority now, not conducting. And that was the best advice I ever got because, like, and yeah, you know, the same teacher, he was my clarinet teacher when I was 14, 15. He was like, yeah, you just want to get all the musical experience you possibly can, doing everything, and then that will inform how you become a conductor and make you a much better conductor. Best advice I ever got. That's what I did. Basically, I studied clarinet. I did every possible kind of musical thing I could do.
And who was the first
My first
hired you?
Oh, the first person that hired me as a conductor?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, that's a good thing. I think the first thing I ever really got was when I worked at the Los Angeles Opera, and I got like an assistantship at the Los Angeles Opera, and that was the first kind of real job that I got. And then, yeah, you know, I just, you know, when I finished my, so I played in this training orchestra called the New World Symphony for a couple of years after
Sure.
college. It was, but after that, I decided I wanted to really focus only on conducting. I went to school for a year at the Peabody Conservatory of Music studying conducting.
So you applied for everything.
I applied for everything, and like, you know, you asked about conducting people that were either mentors or people that were inspiring to me. I would say the conductors that inspired me quite a lot, especially in the early times, were George Schulte, who was music director of the Chicago Symphony, I worked with Michael Tilson Thomas actually when I was in the New World Symphony, and he's been a kind of mentor. But I was also going to say that when I look back, actually, like, I also kind of had visual mentors because I grew up in a city. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I lived in Dayton, Ohio for about 7, 8 years. And at that time, the music director of the Dayton Philharmonic was actually a black man. His name was Isaiah Jackson. And so, like, you know, someone reminded me of that. And I was like, actually, I remember going to, like, his concerts, like, you know, at 9 and 10, 11, you know, school concerts. So, yeah, so these, like, I think it just gives the case that actually representation does matter and that people are paying attention. And so, you know, subconsciously I saw him conducting and I thought, oh, okay, I can do that too.
Well, and you can certainly do that. And X opening at the Met, running for the whole month of November, and a live performance on November 18th. So.
Yes, live in HD theaters. Yeah, in the theater you can see it there too.
Right. Well, Kazem, thank you so much for being our guest today.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Wishing you so much success.
Thank you.
And thanks to you all, too, for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and we will see you the next time. Don't forget to see X at the Metropolitan Opera. Order your tickets now. You'll need to order them early. Thanks so much, Kazem.
Thank you.